Hello beautiful tea drinkers. In this video I'm going to be talking about a mistake that racing game and racing simulator developers have been making repeatedly over the last few years. And this mistake is something that's actually costing them more time and effort, more work, and could be completely avoided, making the developers more money and allowing players of games, even those that sadly live in Birmingham, to be happy. Welcome back to the Game and Muscle YouTube channel. That is correct. If you're a subscriber, you're probably not particularly clever. But if you're drinking tea, you're very sexy. So the big mistake that I just spent 40 seconds hyping up is that developers ruin the good parts of the games by filling the games up with low quality crap and poorly executed content just for the sake of superficially having a list of features that can be ticked off to go in the marketing and maybe sound good in a boardroom. The irony and the frustration is they don't even need to do it, because the good parts of the games are good enough games on their own and more than enough to keep people engaged for hundreds of hours. And the people that are causing this, I don't think are actually the developers. I think it's publishers and money people that don't understand games design and games development. They don't seem to realise that if you have a really nice meal with the basics covered, like we do a fish and chip shop. I know you guys internationally don't understand what fish and chips are, but like you've got really good fish, you've got some really good potato, that's good enough. That's what you expect from fish and chips. If you then go and slap a turd on the side of the plate, you're gonna make the whole meal smell and taste of shit, and you're gonna ruin the whole meal. You don't need to put the shit on the plate. Or mushy peas, you filthy pea eaters. Actually, I quite like mushy peas. But it doesn't... The point is, adding more shit to something does not rub off in a positive way to the stuff that's already good. It always diminishes the product. I get why they do it, though. Someone in a boardroom is like, oh, look, here's a list of features. Here's this other product that had this list of features. Oh, we've outcompeted them on features. Therefore, the consumer will see this feature list and they'll go, oh, I'll buy that because it's got more than this other thing. But in reality, it doesn't work like that at all. It's only someone that has no understanding of actually playing games thinks of things like that. But, you know, I think that is why it actually happens. Now, the biggest example recently of this and what's inspired this rant video is the new Forza Motorsport, where I'm not kidding, the multiplayer in that game is actually really nicely executed. For those of you that don't know, it's basically a complete clone of GT Sport, in that you have a few events that are happening that replace every week, and you just go in online, you click join, and it puts you in a lobby. You do a practice session, you can do a bit of quali, and then you go to the race and you've got a ranking and a safety rating. It should basically be the foundation for every single multiplayer racing game. Congratulations to Gran Turismo for setting that up on console. Everyone should just copy that. Also, the iRacing type way of doing stuff. It's just how it should be. And to see that as in Forza was really, really nice. And that mode worked pretty well. It's not perfect, the netcode's not perfect, the penalties aren't perfect, but as a game to load and jump into and play and have okay racing, which is the point of a racing game, it's actually a very compelling gameplay loop, and especially compelling given the complete lack of that type of structure on games consoles outside of Gran Turismo. Certainly nothing else on the Xbox does that. So that's really, really nice. But then you look at the rest of the Forza game and it's horrendously bad. So the single player, for example, is really just not worth playing. The AI is dull, it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't really race you. The presentation of the single player is humorless, really boring. The unlocking of cars is boring. There's no real fanfare, there's no real enjoyable sense of progress, there's no real story there. The buying of cars and how you level them up doesn't quite work perfectly. The body mods and what you can actually do to adjust the cars is really limited. And it's genuinely worse than Forza games that came out over 10 years ago, which at least had a bit of humour, fun little gameplay modes, cone challenges, different objectives, you know, a nice sort of Top Gear-y feel to it. And it's not, I'm not saying that every game has to do that or be the same with driving games. What I am saying, though, is if you're going to do single player, you need to actually make that single player engaging and be a tiny bit creative. Now, you might say, oh, well, just ignore the single player then and just play the multiplayer. That's fine, and people can do that and inevitably will do that. But there are some key issues here. One is that if you look at reviews for Forza, most people, a lot of reviews, probably like 90% of the reviews are like, this game's dull. Because they've played the whole thing that's available to them, and they've gone through the single player, and they've also expected, based off previous Forza games, for the single player to actually work, and the fact that it's there, they expected the game to be fun, which isn't an unreasonable requirement for a video game. So they've got their impression of the game largely from the single player component, and then they might have done some multiplayer and they might have gone, oh, that's okay, but it's not really been their focus, and they've already had a bad taste in their mouth from the mushy peas of the single player. So that has already massively tarnished the actual perception of the game as the general marketing is going out and the general reviewers have covered the game. Then you have the problem that the single player will have taken away development time and resources and design focus from the multiplayer part of the game. If all that time and effort that was put in the single player was also put into the additionally added to the multiplayer, you probably wouldn't, quite likely you wouldn't have this stupid penalty system they have. Maybe there could have been more time with programmers spent on network smoothing or other implementation or other components. Maybe more time could have been put on having more actual race cars in the game as opposed to general road cars, or pertinent features that would make the multiplayer more engaging in terms of how you can upgrade the cars, maybe fix setups. I don't know, there's a whole bunch of things that you could put development time into the multiplayer that would have been removed by putting into single player. Obviously, when it comes to game development, it's not always the case that, oh, you put more people on something, it ends up being better. The labour doesn't directly translate in that way with games development, unfortunately. But the fact is, if you are focused on a specific thing with any product and everybody's on the same page and everyone's like working on a really tight defined goal, that tight defined goal will be better executed than if you dilute things, resources, but also dilute things conceptually. Things will always just end up being a bit messy. So that focus on specific stuff and doing those specific things well pretty much universally always makes a product better. Now, not to just have a go at Forza on this, you've got like GT Sport is a really good example of a game that just did online basically. That's what it was marketed as, that's what you expect as a consumer, and it did that really well and actually set that benchmark up for what you should expect for a online racing game. The single player in that game wasn't really promoted. It did have some stuff to do in it, but, you know, really was not the point of the game. Then comes GT7, and it's done exactly what this Forza game's basically done, where it has a completely crappy single player. AI's terrible. The progress through it is literally worse than GT games that came out in the PS2 and PS3, and it's just that will have diluted from what they could have done to improve the online component even more. It's so stupid. Now, this isn't just limited to racing games on console and more arcadey stuff or simcade titles. This is also happening with PC racing simulators, where you have, over the last few years, we've had this obsession with needing to have weather and day, night, and all these other additional features when the games themselves don't have basic features to enable close online racing, like basic ranked systems that are required for you to get OK racing before you even have all these other advanced features and endurance features and God knows what. I mean, even ignore the online ranked racing, they don't have good AI for you to do proper single player races, let alone sprint single player races. So it's not even about the multiplayer, it's like a gameplay loop that makes sense is fundamentally lacking, and yet the developers are then putting in all these like weird, like, oh, let's have day night, let's have rain, let's have 15 different tyre compounds, let's have 1 billion different cars. It's like, no, just focus on a few things and do them really well. And as critical as I am of like ACC, for example, because its force feedback is so dull and lacking dynamic range, and I just think it's a very dull sim to drive. As critical as I am, at least with ACC, at least it's focused on GT3, and at least across the board of its content, despite them doing weather and things, it is quite unified. Like the quality level is fairly flat. There's not anything that's massively terrible in there. There's also not anything that's massively decent either. But, you know, credit to ACC for at least being sort of fairly consistent with all their stuff and doing what it says on the tin. That's so rare within the racing simulator space. Though it does also have totally garbage single player with really lackluster AI, and they have depended on an independent group, Low Fuel Motorsport, to basically bail that simulator out and make it playable online properly, and also then make the endurance part of the game actually make sense, because you've got a structure and the ranking for you to then do longer races. So actually no, Kunos massively messed up with ACC and were just totally bailed out by the community. So I take it back, off to the gulag for Kunos. So really what I'm saying is we need Sims to just focus on a specific thing, a limited thing, just sprint racing with a good tyre model like AC's tyres but with curbing fixed, with some basic ranking, or a nice single player that's actually got good AI and something to progress through. Just focus on a single thing and do that thing well, and you end up with much better games to actually play. Really good examples, really great examples of this sort of thing. Rocket League. You have a bloody ball and some cars, online ranked matchmaking, and you've got to get the ball in the goal. Nice consistent physics. Absolutely fantastic. Pretty damn simple. You know, they actually at one point they did have multiple locations, different sort of courts, if you will, and they just took them out and they actually went, oh no, let's just keep it all the same, flat track with the cage around it. It works. It's all you need. Like real world table tennis. It's a little table with a little net and your table tennis and ping pong balls. Good. That's all you need. You don't need to do more to it. Real world football, 2 goals, football pitch. Right, that's it. You don't. Why do developers, especially with something that's so technically difficult and each thing you add in is a potential to ruin everything, why do they insist on this feature creep? Well, we know why, for the reasons we said at the beginning of the video, but oh dear. So, yes, I really wish that the developers would stop making this mistake. I blame the publishers more than the developers. Again, developers are all working really hard. They're often underpaid for the technical level of work they're doing. So it's not attack on the developers. It's attack on money and the industry. That's the message I want to be really concise with in these videos, is that the consumer needs to be really vocal at the aspect of the profiteering and the publisher side of it, but not vocal at the people on the ground floor that are actually doing the work and working bloody hard. I've worked in the games industry. I know lots of people that work in the games industry. They work very hard. So this is targeted at the money people. It's always the money people. They're always to blame. But yeah, focus on simple stuff, and you could. This is great. This is a great philosophical lesson as well. If you do focus on simple things yourself and do those well, you will have a better life and you'll do less work and you'll be happy. Easy. Right. Let me know what you thought of this video. I mean, if you got this far in it, you probably need to bludgeon yourself with a brick. But congratulations. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for being a subscriber of this channel and all that despair. I will see you soon for some online racing. We live stream on Twitch, obviously. And we'll also have more rant videos. You guys, people seem to generally like these. I don't know why. I don't know what's wrong with you. But till the next one, happy tea drinking. Take care. And goodbye.